Hey there everybody, Chris from Orlando here, and today we're throwing back the curtain on some of Disney World's secrets, legends, and myths, and seeing if they have any truth behind them or are just bogus. I want to point out though, that what we are doing to these myths is not busting. Our lawyers have made that abundantly clear that any myths you see here today are not being busted. Think of it more like legend smashing or secret crushing myth. You know what, just roll the intro. I'll think about it and get back to you. Let's start with a myth that's clearly not true, but is sort of a running joke amongst cast members. And although I never got asked about it myself, it is apparently something that has been asked about in the past. Namely, the glass dome over the parks. Yes, apparently because people think that Disney has to be so beautiful and perfect all the time, that Disney built a glass dome that would rise up and shelter the parks in case of any inclement weather. Again, this is obviously not true, as anyone who has ever been to the parks in the afternoon during summer can attest. And if you told me this before I started working there, I would have thought, no way would anyone believe that's true. But after working there, I wouldn't be surprised. This next myth you might have seen floating around Facebook. If you see Toy Story characters out and about, you can yell out, "Andy's coming!" and they'll drop to the ground and lie motionless for a few seconds before moving on with their business. Now, this one used to be true. You see, this used to be true. However, people started sharing this information around on social media, and people were yelling out, "Andy's coming!" every 5 minutes. It started to become a problem because the characters couldn't do their jobs, and some of them were even getting hurt. But thankfully, Toy Story 3 came out, so now they could just reply with, "Andy's at college!" And this is why we can't have nice things. Speaking of characters, let's talk about a truth that's spiraled out of control into absurdity. The characters can't take off their costumes on stage. I mean, obviously, that's a no-brainer. So why am I covering this? Well, it's because people hear that and think they can't take off their heads. That must mean Disney's trying to legalize slavery! I should explain. It seems that some people think that once a character comes out for their set, they're out there for the long haul. That no matter what happens, the show must go on! Florida heat be damned. So there's been rumors that the Mickey you're currently taking a picture with might have a head half full of the actor's vomit, but they can't leave to go clean it up until the end of their set. I even read a story that a performer once passed out in a suit, and they just put him on a bench and continued to let people take pictures. No, what's wrong with you people? This is obviously not true. People do sometimes have problems with the suits, sure, but if something's about to go sideways, they don't have to stay out there the entire set. There's a secret signal that a character can give to the attendant, covering one of their eyes and waving, to let them know that they need to head backstage. No, a character can't unmask on stage, but that doesn't mean there are procedures in place to help them out if need be. Let's now take a look at one that is true, specifically about the American flags you see around the parks. Now, the main flag that you see on Main Street, USA is indeed an actual US flag. They have a full formal flag retreat every day around 5, and you even get a visiting veteran to help out with the ceremony. The other flags you see littering Main Street, not so much. You see, we Americans are pretty protective of our flag, and there's a whole mess of rules and regulations about how to properly display them, and all the upkeep and all that other stuff. Disney thought, man, if we're gonna have dozens of flags around Main Street, that sounds like a lot of work and pain, and take a star off and it's not an American flag anymore, so we're all good. However, there is one fake flag that gets treated just as well as the real one, and that's the flag at the Liberty Square riverboat. Like the other flags, this flag is missing some stars, so we don't technically have to follow procedures with it. However, not everyone knows it's a fake flag, so when we take it down every night, we still have to do all the complicated folding in order to keep the illusion alive. This one comes from one of my followers on Facebook, Chris from Orlando CM, and that's the myth that Disney never turns off the music or animatronics after the park close. Meaning if you were to say be walking around in Small World, those dolls will still be moving and singing that song and oh god, I'm gonna have nightmares tonight. And as if this one is true or not, yes and no. Take for example Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin, a ride in which there's constantly ride vehicles going by. Those animatronics are always on a loop, so yeah, even when the ride is closed, they're still doing their thing. But if you're working at an attraction in which there's space between vehicles, like Dinosaur for example, once the last ride vehicle of the night goes by, they just stay in their starting position until the sensor goes off again. And obviously the techs have to turn the things off in order to work on them. As for the background music heard throughout the lands, they actually stay on. According to some stories, this is done because it's easier to just keep them on, or that it's cheaper. That sounds suspect even at the best of times, but then something happened that disproved that once and for all. After the tragedy at Pulse, Disney had sort of a memorial to the victims on Main Street, and part of that was that they shut off the music on Main Street for 49 seconds. A touching tribute to be sure, and it shows that it's probably not that hard to just turn the music off. As for the music at the rides, when all the guests are clear of an attraction, the audio gets turned off. Boom, done. Phew, that way we don't have to worry about any creepy singing dolls. Rumor boomers! That's what we're doing! Rumor boomers. Sorry, I threw off the groove. Anyway, while we're stopped, take this time to subscribe. I'm trying to reach 200 subscribers by October, so I could do a spooky giveaway. Speaking of spooky, let's head over to Haunted Mansion for our next 3 legends. First is the legend that one of the singing busts inside the graveyard is modeled after Walt Disney. This one is simply not true. Instead, it's modeled after Thurl Ravenscroft, which is a name that commands respect. And he has a voice to match. He has a deep, deep baritone that sings on Grim Grinning Ghost, as well as your mean one, Mr. Grinch. And he was the original voice of Tony the Tiger. I can see how this one gets mixed up. The two really do look alike. However, there is one really cool secret that not a lot of people will notice because they're too busy trying to get on the ride. Go to the mansion either early in the morning or late at night, anytime when there's not a lot of people there, and hang back in the stretching room for a moment. You can actually hear the gargoyles talk. I only found this out when I did a backstage tour of the mansion, and it's really cool. And also, let me tell you, that ceiling coming back down for the next show is terrifying to watch. And finally, at the Haunted Mansion, let's talk about the myth that people scatter the remains of their loved ones there. Dear God, that's absolutely true and it happens like once a month! So, if you've never heard the story, people have a tendency to sneak in the ashes of their dearly departed and normally dump them in the mansion, but I've heard it also happen at Space Mountain and Spaceship Earth for some reason. You know what happens when they do that? Well, for one thing, they're kicked out of the park, and then they have to shut down the ride because, surprise, it's a tremendous biohazard. Custodial brings in a special vacuum and sucks up all the ashes, and they get tossed. And with how often this happens, the dump closest to Disney World is probably one of the most haunted places on Earth. By the way, when I go, don't scatter my ashes at the Haunted Mansion. Do it at Dinosaur, right in front of Dr. Seeker. Let's talk about what most people think is the golden rule of being a cast member. The fact that they can't never, ever say, I don't know. If I'm working at Space Mountain and you walk up to me and ask, hey, how much does it cost to stay at All-Star Sports? I don't fucking know. Now, Disney does try its best to try to equip us with everything we might need in order to answer questions. Our biggest tool is the telecast, a handy little pamphlet that gets printed every week with park hours, show times, where to find notable things like ATMs and smoking areas, stuff like that. However, this is a small little pamphlet that can fit in your pocket. It's not gonna have everything. If you don't know how much a churro costs, you're allowed to say, I don't know, why don't you ask the people who actually work at the churro cart? Don't actually say it like that though. And our final myth today is that Walt Disney's frozen head is under either Cinderella Castle or Pirates of the Caribbean, sources vary. And let me just put an end to this once and for all. Oh dear God, it's real! So that's my list. What are some crazy myths and rumors that you've heard about Disney World? Leave them in the comments down below. And don't forget to like and share this video if you enjoyed it. And subscribe to Chris from Orlando. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Links in the description down below. I'm Chris from Orlando. And I'm the man, the myth, the legend, and the rumor boomer. Trademark. Take care, y'all. One love. Don't hurt nobody.